Good morning, good afternoon, folks. Welcome back once again to DESI Vibes 360. Thanks for all the incredible support we have been getting from all our viewers. Really appreciate your time. Let's talk about the significance of Memorial Day here in the United States of America.
So, speaking of the next step, right? Once you were recruited by the Marines, Brandon, which were the countries you visited? I know there may be a lot that may be, classified, but which countries did you visit during your duty and experiences?
So to name a few, Iraq, Afghanistan, and then I did a couple MUs, which is a Marine Expeditionary Unit, where you go through the Mediterranean. On the East Coast, like Camp Lejeune, we do med floats, so through the Mediterranean, so Northern Africa, Southern Europe, and then into the Red Sea. And then on the West Coast, it's different, but on the MUs, that's where you really go to a lot of different places. You train with a lot of different countries. And so it was all Southern Europe, Northern Africa, and then even into Oman and Bahrain, all those countries. So I definitely got to see the world, that's for sure.
Speaking of, Afghanistan and Iraq, Brandon, I know 9/11 happened 10 years later. U.S. goes into Pakistan and gets Osama bin Laden, and army headquarters happened to be only a 7 iron away from that place. How do you think it happened? And I know there's classified material, you cannot get into the discussion of that, but for US to go in a different country and conduct an operation for more than an hour, take all these helicopters and special forces and bring the world's most wanted person out of that country, without getting into more details that I don't want to get in trouble, but what can you share your experience on this topic or general comments per se?
Well, I think first off, symbols are very important, right? Symbols mean everything, and Osama bin Laden was a symbol. For the America, he was a symbol of hatred, of just devastation. And even though he had been out of the game for a while, it was important to close that chapter. Because if we could never catch him, it's always an open loop, right? No closure. So it was very important that the U.S. did what they did, because that showed a couple things. And this is in Brandon's opinion. It showed that even though that happened 10 years ago, what he did, we can still catch you anywhere, right? So that's pretty dangerous to know that you can't hide anywhere in this world to where we can't come and get you and hold you accountable for actions that you've done, against the United States. And, second, I think it brought everybody together again, because I remember when I saw that on the news, I looked to my left and right, we were like, we did it. And, just brought everybody together again. It just gave us that feeling about where we were when this originally happened. And again, even the war was still going on, it brought some closure. So it was a very significant moment. And still is. Arun, you mentioned you went to the 9/11 memorial. I went there a couple of years ago also. And there was the uniform of the soldier, or actually, I'm sorry, the Navy SEAL that killed bin Laden. And again, that's a symbol in itself as well.
Yep.
So that one instance was very important.
Great. So let me switch gears here, Brandon. Now you are back home and into the world of business. You are the CEO, president of this company, and so what I wanted to understand from you, like, how has that been a transition for you, number one? Number two, I'm sure you still think about Marines. You have that deeply embedded within yourself, within your heart. So just take us through that process. How did that process was, number one? A little bit you can touch upon what are you doing today? And any message you would like to give to the US citizens or even for the Marines based on your understanding and experience.
So I'll answer your first question. When service members get out of the military, it is tough. It's not when you have gone in an organization at 17 or 18, and if you get out of 4 years, 10 years, whatever that may be, it is a lifestyle change. The military takes care of you. You just have to do what is asked of you, what is told of you. And it's such a different mentality when you get out, because nobody's telling you what to do. You have to figure it out. Your future is in your hands. And typically, a lot of people are older when they get out. So, for instance, I was 17 when I went in, no college experience, got out, I was 28, 29 years old, and I decided to go straight to college. So, here is Brandon. I've had a lot of experience in the military, seen the world, and a different mindset. And I'm sitting in a college classroom learning Algebra 1 with 18-year-olds. But I knew that it was going to be tough. And I took it upon myself to realize this is my opportunity to understand this generation. And I have to be honest with you, I was impressed. Again, there's a common misconception that kids who are in college, their parents pay for everything, that they have a free ride. And that is not, yes, there are some of those kids. But for the most part, these kids were doing school, they had jobs, they were living in apartments with multiple other friends, and they were still getting good grades. So it really made me feel good. And I try to tell that to a lot of people who are coming out, just go to school. But one of the common things people want to do is when they get out of the military, they want to contract. There's a lot of money in contracting, so they'll work for a company, Blackwater, or whatever it is that contracts the military, and they're making good money, but it's on a contract. So when that contract falls through, they have nothing. They don't have not that you need a college education to be successful. I'm not saying that at all, but at least you have something to fall back on. Right, you have an alumni network that you can reach out to. So I went straight to school, and that's how it happened for me. It is not easy for a lot of people, but the Veterans Administration is doing a much better job at making it more accessible. They have a lot of outreach programs for veterans while they're in school. A lot of these schools have individual veterans organizations that you can go to seek out help. So it's a really good network that they have. Now, to answer your second question, before I joined the military, I was always a fit person. I worked out all the time. I played sports. So it was not unorthodox for me to wake up at 5 o'clock when I was in high school to go work out before school. So in a way, I was kind of already set up for success with the military. A lot of my friends called me an old Vietnam veteran because I still wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I work out. And, the one thing, the military teaches you routine. And it is so important to have a routine. So in my company, I work from home a lot of times, but I still work out in the morning. I take a shower, I get dressed as if I'm going to the office, and I sit in front of my computer, and I don't take lunch until 12. I keep a routine, and I keep it regimented. And that is so important, I believe. And that is one of the things the military just further reinforced in me. And then to answer your third question, yes, I am and always will be a Marine. Everybody who was a Marine is and always will be a Marine. I do have to suppress that sometimes and understand my audience when I'm talking to them, because they may not get my sense of humor to where my former Marines would.
Yeah.
That took a little getting used to. But we, kind of lay in the shadows, and, if it's needed, then the Marine will come out again. Kind of just waiting. But yeah, for the most part, it's always going to be a part of who I am. And like I said earlier, I talk to some of my former Marines all the time. We do reunions every year, and that's one of the most important things. Whether you're in India, the United States, Europe, your network is one of the most important things. You have to have people that you can talk to. If you're having a bad day, call them. One of the biggest issues we have in the United States for the military is suicides. There's 22 veterans a day. I think that's what the statistic is. And that sounds high, but it is absolutely true. Just from myself alone, I've been touched multiple times by people who have committed suicide. And it's shocking. They seemed like they were doing fine, and they're here one day and they're gone the next. And there's so many demons that people fight with on a daily basis, and if they had just reached out, maybe one word that you said could have changed or altered their mindset. Not that it would have, but it possibly could. So that's why it's so important to have a network of people that you can talk to and be open with and have clear lines of communication.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This was incredible, Brandon, I tell you. So much of learning for me as a person out here, sitting at like 63 years old guy at this point of time. So anything else, Aaron?
No, thanks for sharing the experiences. Like I said, I get to meet a lot of folks, because of my association with the golf tournament last 10, 12 years. So I get to meet them, hear about their story. I've met folks that, they have lost both legs, prosthetic legs they have. And, one thing is common, the folks that got injured, I've asked them, if would they do it again if they had an option? Unanimously, everybody had said, wouldn't miss a beat. If they had to do it all over again, they'll do the same. So their sacrifices it's really touching. I couldn't be even more thankful to just get to meet these. They are the true warriors. So it's my, honor and privilege to have conversation with folks like Brendan. We'll close out the section, Anshul, but last segment, I know with the changing technology and things are coming up with the AI and all the other stuff, and maybe Soren, you can dig in. I know you just did another podcast on artificial intelligence. If you don't mind, just probe a little bit here, Brandon, as to what he sees with all these emerging technologies in the battlefield.
Of course. So that was a fantastic answer about your Marine experiences. Really moved me, Brandon. But coming to the day of today and tomorrow, with the advent of AI, you see these wars all over the world. You see the Russia-Ukraine war, you see what is happening in Israel and Hamas, and you see more and more AI being used, artificial intelligence. The thing about artificial intelligence is that it can, in a war situation, especially with the military, it can tell you, which places to attack, which, but they don't have to be precise, right? Because everybody understands that it's a war, there are going to be casualties. But how do you see the artificial intelligence scene evolving? How do you see a soldier's life changing over the next few years?
Well, I think that's anybody's guess. In Brandon's opinion, just from what I've seen, it's going to change the landscape. Human beings aren't going to be who fights wars anymore. They're just going to be a deterrent. I didn't mention when we spoke earlier is as good as AI and the technology that we have in the military and just the society in general is progressing us forward. There is something to be said about being simple. And what I mean by that, there was a book I read a long time ago, and it escapes me what the name of the book was, but before 9/11, the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps did this huge drill. They wanted to see what their capabilities were, against like a foreign adversary, almost like Hamas or Al-Qaeda. And they hired this retired, I believe he was a retired officer from Vietnam, to run as the insurgency. So what they were going to do is they would take him, they drop him off in this country, he would kind of create his own insurgency network. And it was, like a back of the napkin kind of game, right? And the U.S. military was in their SIPs, and they would use all the technology that they had to try to track him down and, try to kill him and his organization. Well, it backfired. He was actually able to sink all these ships. And the U.S. was scratching their head. They're like, how did he do this? We had all this technology. We had more people than he did. We had more money. How was he able to inadvertently sink ships? And it was because he kept it simple. He did everything by word of mouth. He did everything by just writing stuff down on a sheet of paper and handing it. And it was undetectable. That's why it's so hard to fight these terrorist organizations, because they're not using a lot. And when I talk terrorist organizations, we're talking about like Hamas or Al-Qaeda. They don't have the technology that we do. They do everything very simple, and the simple stuff is hard to track. No matter how many predators you have flying overhead or how many boots on the ground, or it's hard to detect the simple stuff. And that's something that we have to look out for. When we're talking about Russia and China, they're obviously more advanced, and then we can kind of battle them head. But that is one thing with the terrorists or the insurgency groups. When you mix that with the understanding that they're willing to die for anything, and that when they do die, they're going to go to a better place, and that's really hard to fight. It is hard to fight. That's why these wars last lifetimes. And in the United States, we think in terms of days and weeks, and in other countries, they think in terms of millennia.
Like ISIS or Al-Qaeda, motto, right? You may have the watch, but we have the time, right? They are willing to wait a lifetime to fight this war. They have nothing to lose. So spot on, Brandon.
There's a quote that I always like, and I may botch it a little bit, but essentially what it says is somewhere, in some place, in some clime, there is somebody who wants to kill you. And he or she doesn't care what time it is. They don't care what they have to eat or what they're going to eat. All they care about is killing you. And they're walking with their backpack on and their gear, and you better be ready.
Wow, wow, simply wow. Brandon, thank you so much. We had an incredible time out here, not only for understanding but learning piece. There's so much of information I was not aware of it. So thank you so much. Before we just wrap this up, one final question. What do you do for fun?
Kids.
Okay.
My kids are finally at the age where I can teach them how to ride a bike and teach them how to swim. And
Right.
that is full circle for me. I will say, without getting on too much of a tangent, a lot of people that I speak with, they watch the news, they're all about doom and gloom, that the world is falling apart. And I say that there's good days and there are bad days, and it shall pass. Every generation has had their issues, whether it's now or whether it was during Nam and the Black Panthers, and when it was just, what I mean, like there was a lot. Every millennium, or the Russian nuclear crisis, the Cold War, that we can do that gives me solace in that is to raise my kids to think for themselves. They'll ask me, what can we do? We can't, it's not going to help to get on social media. It's not going to help to try to convince somebody else of your views. All you can do is raise your kids to think for themselves and do what they believe is right.
Great. Hey, thank you. Thank you once again. And we'll talk sometime soon once again. And thank you.